In this program, we learn about concatenation and integer division. We've been talking a bit about concatenation, so probably there are no surprises here. But integer division is something that comes up quite a lot, and you can be certain that I will put it on every test you see. In this example, no input from the keyboard. Y is 12, X is 30, and they are both integers. Then we have a double A, and A is X divided by Y. And here we have B, and B is, and parentheses first, multiplication first. So X times 1.0 divided by Y, and we'll talk about this in a minute. But first of all, we're going to output X, and then the word plus, and then the value of Y, and then the word equals, and then we're going to add them together, and this is all concatenation. Let's comment out some of the other output lines. Just concentrate on the first one. And we see 30 plus 12 equals 3012. And the reason is because it is concatenation. We have concatenated. If we wanted to add X and Y, then we're going to have to put that in parentheses so that we do the addition before the concatenation. And there we go, 42. In the next one, we're going to do division. And X, you'll remember, is 30 and Y is 12. So 30 divided by 12 equals 2. Well, we're not so happy about that. We would like it to be 2.5. 2 is not an acceptable number. And yet it is. The reason is that X is an int, Y is an int, and when I divide one int by another, I get an int. An integer divided by an integer is an integer. In math, we are not so particular. We cavalierly add integers and doubles and don't even worry about the result. We will add 3 and 7.8 and expect to get 10.8. So we're expecting we add an integer and a double and get a double in return. And we have never ever worried about this. But now we have to worry. We have to start being careful. With division, a double divided by a double is a double. A double divided by an int is a double. An int divided by a double is a double. So your result is always a double, with the single exception of int divided by an int, which is an int. So whenever you are doing division, take a minute to say, is my numerator an integer? If it is my denominator an integer? And if it is, you are probably in trouble. So how do you get around this? Let's look at our next line here. Well, before we got to the print line, we said, well, let's have a double. We'll call it A, and we'll take X divided by y, so integer divided by an integer, but we will store the result in a double and everything will be okay. Not so okay. 30 divided by 12 equals 2.0. It is a double. It just is not the right double. So what happened here? On this line, I took an integer, I divided it by an integer, my result was an integer, it was 2, and I stored that in A, which was a double, so it's stored as 2.0, and then it output as 2.0. So obviously that's not the way to go. Let's try this last way. X divided by y equals b. What is b? Okay, so the first thing that happens here is this multiplication. So I've got an integer multiplied by a double, and the double is 1.0, which will not affect the overall value of x, multiplying it by 1, but it is a 1.0, which is a double. So I've got an int multiplied by a double, which produces a double. So my numerator now is a double divided by an int, so the result is a double, and when I run this, I get the right answer. This is an example of implicit casting. We cast x as a double. We didn't actually change the value of x. Internally, x is still 30. It is still an int. But in this calculation, I multiplied my int by a double, and that made it into a double. I made it into a double, and then I divided it by an int, and a double divided by an int is a double. And so it was stored in B as the correct double, and I get my 2.5. I would have the same result if I had multiplied y by 1.0. Because of the parentheses, this calculation is done first. So y is 12. 12 times 1.0, int multiplied by a double becomes a double. So now I have 30 divided by this double, which is 12.0, and that will give me the answer that I wanted, 2.5. So implicit casting. Casting is when you take your int and on the fly, so to speak, make it into a double. It's not stored as a double. It's just changed into a double in your calculation. And we will talk more about this next week when we do more casting.